We're going to have a talk about control, what the communists fear, what actually hurts them. We'll do that tonight. It is Cinco de Mayo. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the big, beautiful bill, all that and more coming up on I'm Right. All right, let's talk, shall we, about the system, the military specifically, the communists, control. Let's have a little chat here on a Monday, wishing everybody a very happy Cinco de Mayo. So first, remember that the communist believes in controlling everything. Everything has to be controlled. That's the only way you can sell the misery and destruction that he's trying to sell. You have to control what people can see, what people can hear, what people can say, where people can go. It's all about control, all right? You have to get that about these people to get anything else. That's one. Two, they don't look at institutions the way you look at institutions. And if you think they do, if you find yourself saying or even thinking things like, well, we all want the same things in the end, you've already lost. Honestly, you're completely useless. If you think like that, you start out in such a poor direction that you can never get back on the right road. The road is heading that way, and if you say, well, we all kind of want the same things, you're heading that way, and we'll never meet. You're gone. All right? Get it through your head. They don't look at institutions the way you look at institutions. For instance, the United States military. You see, the United States military has roughly 3 million people. It's less than that, but not much less, 2.8, give or take. But 2.8 million people in the United States military. Now, when you think about the military, what do you think about? You think about bravery, courage, defending the country. When there's a veteran introduced at the local baseball game, you stand up, don't you? Probably take off your hat, salute, say hi, woo, love you, respect you. That's how you think of the military. You look at people, Army, Navy, Marine Corps. You look at these people and you think to yourself, wow, that's really cool. They're giving up pieces of themselves, putting their life on the line, defend all the things you think about the military. The communist doesn't think any of those things at all. None. Zero. Zip. To the communist, he sees 3 million people who can be controlled. 3 million government employees, but not just government employees in the military. They have to do what they're told. They have to sit and listen when you talk. They have to speak the way you want them to speak. The communist views the American military as a gigantic opportunity to control 3 million people, a gigantic opportunity to control vast quantities of money and power. So back to kind of what I talked about in the beginning, you can always tell what the communist cares about. It's what makes him squeal the loudest. There's a couple things that you should probably put in your back pocket that the communists have really, really pitched a fit about. I would almost say 3 big things since Trump won the election. The first one of those things was Matt Gaetz becoming Attorney General. That was just a bridge too far. I'll tell you what, we'll come back to that one. Second thing has been illegal immigration, mass deportation. Why do you think that is? Everything else Donald Trump is doing, but the American media is really concerned about illegals being deported. And third, Pete Hegseth. They can't get enough of trashing Pete Hegseth every single day, all day. Hegseth this, Hegseth that, Hegseth this. This is not some 24-hour storyline. This is very clearly something they are hot on. Trump just sat down with Kristen Welker for some strange reason. Here's how it went.
Are you looking for a new Secretary of Defense?
No, not even a little bit. No. Pete's going to be great.
His job is safe right now?
We're doing a fantastic job against the Houthis, who like blowing ships up and watching them sink in the ocean. We're hitting them very hard. No, he's doing a very good job.
His job is safe right now?
Totally safe.
Yeah. We see what she's doing. You're not naive. I see it. You see it. But let's set aside the job he's doing for a moment and have a very, very sober, very real conversation. When I was just talking about the military a couple minutes ago, and I said, 3 million people under communist control and all that, did you think I was talking about past tense things? That's how it used to be. Now, it used to be this way, but now Trump's in charge. Now Pete Hegseth has taken over. Now we got things squared away. Did you think that Dick Levine and all his little dicks are gone?
Hello, I'm Admiral Rachel Levine. Climate change is having a disproportionate effect on the physical and mental health of Black communities. Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to live in areas and housing that increase their susceptibility to climate-related health issues. And 65% of Black Americans report feeling anxious about climate change's impact. Through our Office of Climate Change and Health Equity and the Office of Environmental Justice, we're working with providers and community leaders to identify innovative approaches that empower communities to address the health consequences linked to climate change.
Oh, I know Dick Levine personally is gone, but I wasn't talking about past tense when it comes to the military. Guys like that have been put into place for about 15 years now, 15, 20 years now. The American communist has been putting little dicks like that all over the United States military, top to bottom. Generals, admirals, NCOs, staff NCOs, a 3 million person army. I know it's more than just the army, but a 3 million person army with communism buried, rooted into every single solitary part of it. Did you think it was just the media out for Hegseth? The Defense Department's out for Hegseth. They're now running stories with all kinds of anonymous sources about Hegseth can't do this, Hegseth can't do that. I am here to talk to you about something very, very frank. The state of the United States military is frightening beyond belief. There is more clean out necessary there than you can possibly fathom. And it makes things like this, when Trump talks about this in the budget, it makes me worry.
We have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion. And nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and trash Trump for what he's doing, because I understand he has what borders on an impossible situation, you see. He has to clean out these organizations while at the same time run these organizations. We have to protect American power worldwide. I understand all that. But handing the United States military $1 trillion is like handing a heroin addict $10,000. It's only going to go towards bad things. We are in a crisis situation in the military currently. Remember when Mike Benz came on the show, talked about it?
Oh, it's super nasty. And I am very reticent about $1 trillion Pentagon budget. If you're going to do something like that, do it in year 2 after you've got a massive reorg at the Pentagon that shows reform at a fundamental level. I would like to see the Pentagon come out and match the State Department's reorganization project and say that they've cut 150 agencies. The fact is the Pentagon is where the real money is. This is a massive, massive problem, and by some counts, the Street reported a $35 trillion accounting black hole in the Pentagon back in 2020. If those numbers are true, that would be larger than the entire U.S. national debt, just with the amount of money that's gone missing from the Pentagon.
Back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Why is it that there are 3 really big things the communists are focused on? They wanted to stop Matt Gaetz, and they did. Now we have Pam Bondi. Things have been moving slow at the Justice Department, right? Anyway, moving on past that. They want to keep all the illegals here. Weird how committed they are to that. And they want the head of Pete Hegseth. Now, let me just piggyback this with a little story from the State Department. State Department analyst under Joe Biden $650,000 in fraud in a 2-year span. $650,000. Pleaded guilty, $650,000. That's at the State Department. Now, I want you to think for a moment about the State Department's budget. The numbers don't matter, so forget about that. Forget about the numbers. Let's use a visual representation. That's the State Department's budget. That's the budget of the United States military. One person was writing themselves checks for $650,000. Do you have any earthly idea how many criminals are currently being paid by the United States military? And it's not waste. Stop letting them get away with that. Theft. The largest criminal organization on the planet is the United States government, and maybe the most sinister part of that organization is the United States military as of right now. Why do you think they want Hegseth gone so badly? Why do you think they're so concerned with that? The communist tells you what he truly fears. He tells you all the time. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. We have an incredible show for you here before we get to the rest of our incredible show. Speaking of the military, Pure Talk, they're out there helping veterans in ways that the VA is not, to be honest with you. That's what Pure Talk does. Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, they'll send your money. They'll send it to pride parades and things. Pure Talk doesn't do that. Pure Talk, when they give back to veterans, getting them back on their feet, getting them medical care, help if they needed. That's what they're passionate about. Their CEO fought for this country in Vietnam. That's my cell phone company. You want to switch? You keep your phone, keep your number, or get a brand new Samsung Galaxy free right now with a qualifying plan. Make the switch. Go to puretalk.com/JesseTV. We'll be back. Okay, let's talk about a bit of ugliness, shall we? No, we're not going to make this about The View. We are talking about the budget, spending. It's bad, okay? But you already know that. You know the debt is bad. You know spending is bad. You get all that. But I'm just going to say something once again that I know you already know, but you need to tell your normie friends because they don't. They really don't. And hyper-informed people like you really don't grasp how uninformed your normie friends are. So you need to tell them, when Washington spends money, inflation gets worse. Just make it that simple. Just hand it to them that way. Every new $1 trillion bill, inflation gets worse. It doesn't mean nothing just because the numbers are huge and trillions here and trillions there. It means your standard of living goes down. Your dollar doesn't go as far. You don't get to buy as much food, clothes, trips, cars, whatever it may be, because of Washington spending. Now, we're in the middle of this very frustrating spending debate, and I'll tell you, I'm extremely frustrated because I don't see any good things happening. There's a big, do we do the House bill or the Senate bill? They're all awful. Ron Johnson was on with us last week saying this.
$7 trillion, maybe we can shave $100 or $150 billion a year off of that and be at $6.85 trillion? I mean, it's just completely unacceptable. That's why I'm speaking out right now. I'm putting people on notice. I'm not voting for that. Line by line, let's figure out how to return to pre-pandemic level. Let's set processes in place so we can do it again. We've never had a process to limit government spending. We don't have a balanced budget requirement. The Budget Act, the Simpson-Bowles, the Budget Control Act, none of these things ever controlled federal spending. This reconciliation process won't control it either. That's obvious. They're not getting down to a pre-pandemic level, which is why I'm speaking out.
He's speaking out, and I'm glad he is. Other senators are going on the television. This is John Barrasso, and they're lying.
What number do you believe you'll be able to come up with in terms of spending cuts? You just said to me it'll be more than $1.5 trillion. What are you thinking?
Well, that's what we're working on. This members of the Senate Finance Committee, we've been meeting since last summer on coming up with potential reductions in spending by the federal government. Our aim is $2 trillion. I don't know that we're going to get there. We're going to match whatever the House is able to do. We need to get a bill past the House, past the Senate, to the president's desk so we can make a difference in the lives of the American people and get this country back on track and get more money into their pockets.
Did you hear what he just did there? I hope you heard it because they do it all the time. The GOP loves to do this, love to do it. You see where he put the effort and the emphasis? Did you see it? She asked him, well, what kind of cuts are we getting? Are we going to get cuts? And he kind of gave this little mealy-mouthed answer. Well, I mean, I don't know. The House or the Senate will probably match the House, and I don't know, it could be up to $2 trillion. Either way, we got to get this thing passed so we can get back to work for the American people, and we can get done the things the American people want to get done and the things Trump want to get done, but we're going to get it done. He's lying. They're not cutting a thing. Nobody wants to cut a thing. They want to spend and spend and spend and spend and spend until we all go bankrupt. And here's the ugly, ugly truth of it. And this is why I didn't want to spend a ton of time on this. There aren't a bunch of things in life that I consider to be hopeless. I want to be a hopeful person, and I hope you do too. But when it comes to the budget, at least this one, I view it as a hopeless endeavor because they don't want to stop spending. Everyone wants things to just continue on the way they've always gone on. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. No one wants to say, nope, you can't have that, or nope, you can't have that. This Congress is so evil and corrupt, they're not capable of producing a good bill anyway. It's not humanly possible. So when you're sending me the email that you're about to click send on, well, why don't they just whatever? Or they should just whatever. Before you even hit send, you might as well not even bother because they won't. Asking this Congress to produce a good, corruption-free bill would be like handing $50 million to the American mafia and asking them to build a school with it. Where do you think most of that money is going to go? I know that probably made you uncomfortable too, but it is right. Anyway, Carol Roth is going to join us next. Warren Buffett stepped down. I thought he died, but he didn't die. He's still very much alive, but he did step down. We'll talk to Carol Roth about that. Before we get to Carol Roth, let me talk to you about getting your energy levels up. You need to be feeling good, ready to go, good mood all the time, especially with the budget. Turn to natural solutions. I love chalk because chalk is natural solutions. I hate pills, getting your needle jammed in your arm. I'm not even afraid of needles, but fellas, we've lost all our testosterone because we drink estrogen. We have to get it back. Take a male vitality stack from chalk every single day and get it back. Ladies, they have female vitality stacks for you. Natural herbal supplements will have you feeling so good. 90 days. All I'm asking you is 90 days. If you don't feel like a new person, cancel your subscription. Chalk.com/JesseTV. We'll be back. Warren Buffett is stepping down as Berkshire Hathaway's CEO. Now, if you're not in the finance world, that probably means absolutely nothing to you. And I'll be honest, I'm not in the finance world, so it means absolutely nothing to me. I will say this, though. Warren Buffett does have one of the great quotes of all time where he said, you know what the difference is between cocaine and flying a private jet? You can quit cocaine. That's just a really great quote. I don't know the man, don't care either way, but either way, he's stepping down. I bet Carol cares, though. She probably knows all kinds of things. Joining me now, Carol Roth, 2 times New York Times best-selling author, which kind of sucks because I didn't even make it there once. Carol, why do I care about Warren Buffett? Why do you care about Warren Buffett? Is this a big deal?
It's a big deal within the finance community because Warren Buffett is the GOAT. He's the Michael Jordan of finance, so to speak. The most legendary investor of all time. And by the way, he is a sprightly young 94 years old and now just deciding to step aside as CEO. He's still going to be chairman because he doesn't want to get completely out of the game. But even though we might not agree with his politics, Jesse, there's a lot that we probably really like about about Warren Buffett, you and me, because this is a guy who eats McDonald's every day. He has a Coke every day. He eats Dairy Queen. He doesn't work out. And 94, he's, a gajillionaire, multi-billionaire. And by the way, he's made a bunch of Midwestern normies completely incredibly rich over his time period. So he's been a big deal, and it really is a changing of the guard. He had a longtime partner named Charlie Munger, who, if you like Warren Buffett's quotes, you'd like Charlie's even better. He passed away in November of 23 at 99. By the way, was still working at that point in time. And so I think that, not having his partner in crime probably weighed a little bit on him. And by the way, I give Warren Buffett credit for piecing out, and stepping down right before we go into a global financial reset. So excellent timing on that, Mr. Buffett, and certainly have learned a lot from you over the years, although completely disagree with your politics.
Okay, Carol, before we even move on to anything else, you're going to give everybody a business world breakdown, if you will, CEO versus chairman. In the Carol Roth world, this makes sense. But for most people, both these guys sound like they're in charge. What does this mean?
So the CEO, the chief executive officer, is somebody who is running the business on a day-to-day basis. Overseeing the company and the CEO, there is a board of directors, and they deal with more, instead of operational issues, things like governments and higher, more macro strategic issues. So he will remain on as the head of the board, the chairman, in a non-day-to-day role, a supervisory role, a role that, people can go to, whether it's the CEO or other C-level executives, and get some advice, but he is not going to be making the day-to-day investment decisions for the company any longer.
See, that's the role I want. I don't want any responsibilities. You can pop into my office. I'll make a generous paycheck, and I'll give you some guidance, but I don't want to actually be held to account for anything.
I'll tell you, my
Warren
father
Buffett.
was an electrician, and over time he became the superintendent, and he said he would sit in his shanty all day long, and people would come to him. He would just tell them what to do, and, he'd listen to the radio or whatever. So I feel like if you're, more of a blue-collar person, the superintendent on a job is like being the chairman of the board.
Yeah, our superintendents were always like that, sitting in the truck smoking cigarettes while we were in the ditch. That was pretty much it. The whole
God
time.
bless.
All right, Carol, what does this mean? Does it mean anything for normal people? I know in the finance world it's news, and I get that. It's Warren Buffett. But is this going to hurt me or help me in some way? Should I take anything from this at all?
No, not unless you're a shareholder of Berkshire stock. It was down significantly on the news, even though, the guy's 94 years old. You'd think that information would probably be baked in, that he'd be leaving at some point. But, unless you are somebody who's just a student of the market or of people who are great at their jobs, or a finance nerd, no, it doesn't really impact you in any way, shape, or form. But it's a great learning. Is a very simple guy, by the way. As we talked about the McDonald's and stuff, but doesn't send email, does a lot of reading. Really just kind of a back to basics kind of guy. So worth looking into, but not going to move the needle on your life one way or another.
He did have this to say about the tariffs. Here he was.
Oh, and there's no question that trade can be an act of war. And I think it's led to bad things. Just the attitudes it's brought out in the United States. I mean, we should be looking to trade with the rest of the world, and we should do what we do best, and they should do what they do best. I do not think it's a great idea to try and design a world where a few countries say, ha, 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 we've won, and other countries are envious. Trade should not be a weapon. I do think that the more prosperous the rest of the world becomes, it won't be at our expense. The more prosperous we'll become, and the safer we'll feel, and your children will feel someday.
Carol, I can love a lot of that and hate a lot of that, and I most definitely do. But I think my point with a lot of these arguments is the free traders sure sound like they don't care if we win, and the protectionists, they sound like commies a lot in this whole thing. I have a very difficult time finding picking a side, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I'm somewhat neutral. I think that there are times when it makes sense and times when it doesn't make sense. You have to remember, in terms of our own economic growth, it's not the only tool that we have. I'm somebody who likes to drive incentives and use the carrot when possible instead of the stick. But I'm with you. The fact of the matter is that we are now hearing a lot of folks that sound like commies. We had the president who was on Sunday morning shows saying that, we can only have $2 and 5 pencils and that's good enough. And that sounds a lot like Bernie Sanders, not, President Trump and, the right-leaning people who want to have economic growth. So it's very frustrating. And the other thing I'll say to you, Jesse, is that in March of 2020, I came on your show and we talked about the dangers of COVID. And you and I were two of the early and consistent voices that talked about COVID over and over again. And we are now looking at COVID 2.0. We're hearing that certain businesses aren't essential. We're seeing that big companies like Apple are getting exemptions for smartphones and chips and computers, and small businesses are saying, get out of here. So we're seeing the same issues pop up again, and we know what the long tail impacts are. But yet, for whatever reason, the people who are on one side are now on the other side and vice versa. And it just feels like a very frustrating, bizarre world.
Carol, I know this is not a simple issue, so I don't want to simplify the issue, but are they making it too complicated? And I say that because I can't figure out, I do this for a living. I can't figure out even what's been tariffed and what's about to be tariffed and what tariff got delayed, but there's a new tariff, but that tariff isn't coming into, but now what's going on?
First of all, it's hard to know what exactly the objective is because we keep hearing different objectives and those are all in conflict. We're doing this to raise money, but no, we're doing this for fairness. Okay, well, if you get fairness and everybody removes their barriers, then we're not going to get as much money. So which is it? The same thing with reshoring. I'm hearing that, the middle class is hollowed out and we need to bring back jobs when we have hundreds of thousands of skilled trade jobs that are currently not being filled. So it would seem to me that if you wanted the middle class to thrive and you wanted more people in those jobs, you would have incentives for training for electricians and plumbers and HVAC technicians and machinists in manufacturing, because we have hundreds of thousands of open manufacturing jobs, instead of, okay, well, let's put small businesses out of business and somehow think that that's going to, come up with some sort of objective. So it's very difficult when you don't know what the problem is that you're trying to solve to come up with the objective. And at the 145% level, that is not a tariff. That is prohibition. Nobody can do business under those terms.
Okay, so why hasn't the market really reacted yet, Carol? We had a couple of days it was down, then it's back up, then it's down. What's going on with the market? And I asked that for everybody with their 401k in an app on their phone who wakes up checking it, dreading it every day.
So there are a lot of things. If you go back to December, again, I was on your show and told you, by the way, the Buffett indicator that the market was overvalued in terms of the size of the market to GDP. And then we had the market sell off. So it was overvalued at that point in time, and there was a sell off. And then the tariffs accelerated that. Over the last month, we have seen the rebound of a portion of that, the quote unquote Liberation Day drop off, but not the stuff that happened in the February-March timeframe, and I think we're still down 6 or 7% from that. My take is that when you have Scott Bessent, who is very smart, U.S. Treasury Secretary, out trying to calm the markets, he's giving the signal that there are deals that are coming to fruition. And the market is giving the administration credit. They're basically saying, we think that the worst part of this is behind us, that there's going to be no more escalation in the near term, and that we'll see de-escalation, and they're giving them credit. The longer this goes on without something concrete concrete. And by the way, it's been more than a month and we have not seen one glorious deal yet. So the longer this goes on, the less credible that is. And there's also a thing with the market. The market always pays more for probabilities than for realities. So when it's a probability, they don't know what it is to judge and they can't put a metric on it. When there's a reality, then they could go, well, that's not good enough, and then put a metric on it. So I do think we're going to have a lot more volatility this year. And the longer this goes on, it also threatens the health of the economy. It threatens small businesses being able to exist, which runs through the whole economy. So we need to get some clarity here real quickly. And I think the best thing the administration could do is be more surgical and focus on really the important areas, things like defense and shipbuilding and pharmaceuticals. They should exempt small businesses. They should focus on training people for the jobs that we have. We should remove some of the regulation that is stifling growth. We should get the tax cuts cemented and do things that are going to remove barriers instead of creating this confusion and putting up barriers, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to move forward here.
That was a lot. I feel so much smarter, though. Thank you, Carol. Come back soon. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Ole! All right. Anyway, let's talk to you about your shoes. Your shoes, they're making your knees hurt and your back hurt. Your shoes make your feet hurt. Your feet are tired at the end of the day because your shoes are hot, stinky garbage. What you need is G-Defy, Gravity Defier. These are special shoes, you see. Don't worry, they look great. They have this special technology inside of them that absorbs all that shock that right now your knees are absorbing, your back, your feet. You want a special deal on these? Here's what you do. You text Jesse to 9188. The number is 9188. You just text Jesse and go from there. Big fat discount. Get yourself some G-Defy. We'll be back.
What do you make of that he's just been a little less visible than I think a lot of people, Trump observers, expected he would be?
Yeah, well, reportedly he's been visible at nightclubs far more than he has been on the 7th floor of the Hoover building. And there are reports that daily briefings to him have been changed from every day to maybe twice weekly.
A few moments later.
And now let's circle back to a segment from Friday's show. Frank Figliuzzi was on that morning during this hour discussing the work of administration officials. At the end of that segment, Figliuzzi said that FBI Director Kash Patel has reportedly been more visible at nightclubs than at his office at FBI headquarters. This was a misstatement. We have not verified that claim. We will be right back.
Okay, well, first, it wasn't a misstatement. They lied. That guy came on the show and lied. This is yet another thing the communist does whenever he's caught. He tries to say it was a misstep, it was a mistake, it was a misstatement. That's a lie. That's what that's called. If your kids did it, you'd call them liars. Joining me now, Curtis Houck, managing editor of Newsbusters. Curtis, the media loves to do this, tell an outright lie, let it get around the world about 80 times, and then come out, well, I mean, there was a misstatement, just a little disclaimer 4 days ago. I'm sure that cleared the whole thing up. They lied. That's what they do.
Right. Yeah, it's just like one of Frank Figliuzzi's other big things, which is saying that Trump was a Russian agent. You know, you say something for years and years and years, you let it get into the civic bloodstream, and then when facts show otherwise, there's no need to apologize. Or people have already settled on a particular narrative, or at least some people have, and then mission accomplished. That's exactly what we had here. Although I did enjoy the kind of squirming by Jocelyn Lemire, who is a snake. He's such a weasel, such a little twerp, which is why he fits in well as the host of Morning Joe's millionth hour, whatever that is. But notice that they made him do it. They didn't make Figliuzzi come back on and squeal and squirm. They let someone else do it. But it was also saying, please don't CNN us.
Curtis, is that what these media organizations are doing now when they have to add these disclaimers? We see The View has to do this about every 5 minutes. They'll tell some outright lie about somebody, and then they'll have to give a legal disclaimer on it now. That is just because we started suing, right?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what this is, Jesse. And I'm glad that we're moving any direction back towards some accountability, but it's not about trust. And it's not that they actually feel sorry. They're just doing it because they don't want to get sued. Well, let's think about this. If you don't want to get sued, then maybe you shouldn't just make crap up on the spot. But that's who we're dealing with. Frank Figluzzi is a guy who is repeatedly referred to parents at school board organizations, school board meetings as terrorists. He has said that they are a national security threat. This is the deep state gunk that we are dealing with as a country. He doesn't care about the average citizen. And to think for years, people like Frank Figluzzi were serving as FBI agents, as U.S. attorneys that were arresting and putting people behind bars with these kinds of deep disgust and hatred for certain groups of Americans. You just wonder about what these agencies have been up to for all of these previous decades. But it's about time that just because Donald Trump came in, now these media organizations are running scared, and because of the work of Zachary Young suing CNN for having ruined his life as a paramilitary contractor, we're starting to see some sort of a little bit inching back towards some semblance of normalcy, but it cannot stop. You can't be satisfied. So whenever the 60 Minutes thing comes down for the Kamala Harris interview, another donation to the Trump Library, you can't just say that you're satisfied. People need to keep the boot on the throat.
Curtis, another person they keep lying about, they can't help themselves, is Pete Hegseth. This is very obviously something they're not going to let go because it's not a 24-hour news cycle. They're on this and they won't let off it. What do you make of their problem with Pete Hegseth?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, he's not a suit at the Pentagon who has spent years leaking to all of these sniveling reporters like Natasha Bertrand at CNN. You can tell that she has a personal animus against him, has gleefully been working publicly and probably privately behind the scenes to try and get rid of him. Because he, again, as he pointed out in his hearing, which I thought was from an image standpoint, was good, have someone who has dust on their boots, who actually wasn't sitting in an air-conditioned room inside the green zone of Iraq, who actually was out, who actually saw battle, who was actually there with the rank and file, who was one of the rank and file. They can't stand that. And then two, what he actually wants to do to get rid of this communist anti-family nonsense out of the Pentagon, to actually enact standards for our military, that we are the strongest, most lethal fighting force known to man, that we can actually be that again. And so all of those things put together, just the hate from the press because he worked at Fox, and what he wants to do inside the Pentagon, plus just hating him because he's a Trump nominee, all of those things put together show that he probably is enemy number one, which we saw in our study with the network evening newscast, ABC, CBS, NBC, he was 100% negative, whereas the president was back at 92%. Elon Musk and RFK Jr. all well below that. There's a reason why he is more hated, depending on who you're listening to, than the president.
Yeah. Curtis, tell me about defunding NPR and PBS. What happened here?
Yeah, on Friday or late Thursday night, it was one of those things after 11 p.m. Eastern, the president signed an executive order to basically defund PBS and NPR, and also direct other government agencies to cease funding these cease giving out grants like DHS, National Endowment for the Humanities, HUD, to give money to PBS and NPR. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting is this board that oversees them, and those seats are appointed by the president. They've since come out and said, we're an independent agency. Well, you're appointed by the president. You serve at the pleasure of the president, so screw off. But this is something that a Republican president should have done. You talk about this all the time, Jesse, doing what you actually campaign on doing. And Republicans, this is one of many issues where they haven't shown a spine for decades, where they just said that they want to defund PBS and NPR, and then they don't actually do it because they get scared of, oh, you want to kill Big Bird or whatever crazy reason. Kids won't be able to read now or something like that. Well, the president actually had the stones to do something about it. Congress needs to now do something about it. Unfortunately, this is going to end up in the courts where, these far-left judges, they're the ones that are carrying around the PBS and NPR tote bags when they do those funding pledges. These are the kind of people that call in. So it's going to be a fight all the way to the Supreme Court, I think, on this particular issue.
Every daggone thing. All right, which brings me to Jen Psaki, because Jen Psaki, she was talking about covering up Biden's decline and saying it's a cover-up is dangerous. Here she was.
I left in May of 2022, just for the facts here. And I have seen Biden once since then, when I took my daughter to the holiday party this last December after he had lost. And so I hadn't seen him in person during that period of time. I never saw that person, not a single time. And I was in the Oval Office every day that was on that debate stage. I'm not a doctor. Aging happens quite quickly. Cover up is a very loaded term, I think.
Well, it means you knew that it was really bad and you're pretending otherwise versus you're deluding yourself, which I think is what people do a lot.
Well, I understand, but I still think it's like cover up is often like a crime, right? We're talking, when people use that term.
They say it's worse
phrase,
than the crime.
People use that term as they relate to Watergate or the covering up of not sharing public information about a war.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing anybody of a crime
I understand,
here,
but other people have used that term, and I think it's a bit of a dangerous term.
Yeah, they covered everything up, and Jen Psaki knew the entire thing. I know from my sources, and I don't have sources like you have, I know that she was actually frustrated. They wouldn't let her see the president because he was so dementia-addled half the time.
Yeah, and I've heard as well that, she definitely had some teeth. All those folks that are saying if you actually would try to report on the president, you would try to hold his feet to the fire on this issue or that issue. She was vehement in defending him or threatening reporters. So I would just say it's a very low bar, of course, Jesse, but she's a way better liar and more eloquent. She speaks in complete sentences compared to Karine Jean-Pierre, which is why I guess the last few years were just... there's some dark gallows humor to what was going on. But with her, because she's so well-spoken, she's the epitome of the Karen who asks to speak to the manager because, the $100 dinner is not exactly cooked the way it was shown on Instagram. I think Karen is an overused term, but I think she is definitely the fit. She embodies that. She's the personification of that. I think back to a documentary at the end of the Obama years that CNN did. They followed her on her way to the White House one day, and she was just like, well, I'm just a parent just like all of you. I sing the Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round with my kids too. It was the single biggest joke that I've ever seen in terms of someone in DC trying to relate to the American people. It just sticks with me years later because it was just so pathetic and insane. This is who she is. And that's why Democrats hire her, administration after administration, position after position, because she's pretty good at it. But, at this point, we know the truth about Biden. When it comes to somebody as demented and struggling as he was, truly cover that up and get people to believe her.
Yeah. Plus, she had to call it a holiday party. These freaking people. Curtis, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Holiday party. That's a dead giveaway right there. Anyway, today's a holiday. A big one. We're going to talk about it for Lighten the Mood next. Hola. It's time for Lighten the Mood. It's a Cinco de Mayo, and you know how cultural I am. I'm obviously a well-traveled man. I habla many different languages and dialects, which may actually be the same thing, but you understand what I'm saying. And so today, it's Cinco de Mayo. This is a day that is sacred in Mexico. And we thought, in honor of this sacred holiday, we thought it would be appropriate to name the top 3 Cinco de Mayo foods. Top 3 Mexican foods, really, but I digress. So first, let's start at number 3, hold the suspense, if you will, is enchiladas. Now, I have to put a little disclaimer on this. This could have been number 1. It just depends on the enchilada. This goes back to the pizza versus cheeseburger debate. In general, pizza is going to be better than a cheeseburger. That said, nothing beats a perfect cheeseburger. Nothing. A perfect cheeseburger is better than, but they're not all perfect. Enchiladas are this way. Most enchiladas are very good. And so that's why they're on number 3. You get the right one, it's everything. It's everything. But anyway, for our purposes now, it's number 3. Number 2, an iconic Mexican dish, fried ice cream. There's actually this little Mexican joint right up the road from where I'm sitting right now. They do this authentic thing with their fried ice cream where they take Cinnamon Toast Crunch and they crunch it up and then they bread the ice cream, and that, a Mexican tradition like no other. Which brings us to the final and superior Mexican food everybody already knows. Let's not give it away here, but everyone knows. Drum roll, nachos. Nachos. And don't scoff at that. They're everywhere for a reason. Maybe you were thinking I was going to say tacos or burritos or a chimichanga or fajitas or all that stuff is fine. Do they sell those at the baseball game? They sell nachos. They sell nachos everywhere. Gas station, nachos. Mexican restaurant, nachos. Nachos are available everywhere because they're the best. It's that simple. I'll see you tomorrow. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.